So I have recently gotten promoted, but before I got promoted, from the ages of 21 to about 25, I was making no more than $19 an hour. Now I was working, 40 hours a week, but my hourly, salary was never more than $19 an hour. And at the time when I was making $19 an hour, in the early stages, I thought financial freedom was, something kind of reserved for the people who are making, six figures or way more than $19 an hour, right? Like, how can you save? How can you invest? How can you build wealth when your paycheck barely covers your normal day-to-day expenses? But here's the good thing, right? When I was making $19 an hour and I got really financially conscious, those years of not making a lot of money really taught me the lessons that kind of reshaped how I look at money in general. You get a new respect of money when you go for a very long time not making a lot of money. And not that I'm making a lot of money now, but, funny enough, those lessons that I've learned making little pay have carried me way further than I expected in my financial freedom journey than if I were to just be making a lot of money at a really young age, because I probably would have messed it up. So today I want to share the 5 biggest lessons that I learned about financial freedom for the past couple of years where I'm just making $19 an hour and trying to get, trying to build a foundation of, financial freedom on a low pay. So I think the first thing that we need to talk about is about budgeting. Far too often when people talk about budgeting, they talk about budgeting like it's restriction, right? But I personally think if you reframe the way you look at budgeting as freedom, you're going to enjoy it a lot more and you're going to appreciate it a lot more. When I first started this journey, back then, I used to hate the idea of budgeting because I never wanted to restrict myself. I still wanted to enjoy life to a little bit of an extent, because most of the people online are going to tell you that budgeting is all about cutting back, and living kind of this boring life. But when you're on a smaller income, budgeting is actually the tool that's going to give you the breathing room. So instead of, wondering about where your money has disappeared to, if you have a budget, you know exactly where your money's going rather than where it's disappearing, right? So for me, I remember the first time that I actually took budgeting seriously, right? What I ended up doing was I took my bank statements, I put everything on an Excel spreadsheet, and I just looked at everything. You don't have to even go hardcore, even if you just start looking at stuff. And you honestly get shocked about how many things are just slipping away. For example, I remember when I first did this, I didn't realize that I was paying for Adobe Photoshop for the past year, and it was $9.99 a month. I didn't think anything of it. That's $120 that's out of my pocket for an application that I don't use anymore. By budgeting, you start to realize if I can give my money an area to go and I know exactly where my money's going, all that leftover money that has no allocation, you have the complete freedom to do whatever you want with it. You can save it, you can invest it, you can spend it if you want, whatever it might be. And you know exactly what you could and you can't spend. That's when I started realizing that budgeting is not about restriction. It's about control over your money. So if you guys don't have a budget yet, you're not making a lot of money, or even if you are making a lot of money and you don't have a budget, I highly recommend you get on one. And just remember, it's not about restricting yourself on a day-to-day basis. It's about finding places where your money should be going, finding places where your money shouldn't be going, and then figuring out what number you're left over with. That way, you have the freedom to do whatever you want with it. So the next thing I learned is that saving and investing is a lot more about habits than it is about the actual amount of money that you're saving and investing. At $19 an hour, when I was saving or I was investing, it's impossible, right, to save a big chunk of money or to invest a big chunk of money. You're not able to put away hundreds every paycheck. You're not able to put away $1,000 a month. Sometimes it was only $20. Sometimes it was $50. But what I realized is the actual dollar amount that you're saving and investing really doesn't matter nearly as much about building the habit of saving and investing. Every time you save something, even if it was small, right? Or every time I invested something, even if there was times where I literally invested $5. All I was telling myself is I'm the kind of person who saves, I'm the kind of person who invests, and the number of money I make does not define me to do that. And that identity shift is really huge for a lot of people because the habit is going to grow with your income. If you can't save money when you're making, $19 an hour, you're not going to magically start saving when you make $30, $40, $50 an hour. It doesn't work like that. You have to build the habit of saving and investing. And honestly, seeing a little savings account grow, slowly, that's what gives you motivation to keep going. So it made me feel like I was moving towards something bigger than just my next paycheck. So what I would recommend for you guys is, if you guys are not saving or investing, you don't make a lot of money, find $5, $10, $20 every week or month to invest. And yes, it can literally be like $5 a month. Start investing it, set it up automatically, and just don't worry about it. And that way you will become the type of person that puts saving and investing really high on your list. That way, when you actually start making really good money, you'll already have that habit built up. So the next thing that I learned, and this should be, pretty common knowledge at this point, but debt is the silent killer of your financial freedom, right? Whether it's, credit cards, cars, whatever it might be, but more importantly, it's that high interest debt, especially, what we're seeing from credit cards nowadays. The problem is, if you're at a younger age, it gets very normalized. Like, everyone's using credit cards. People are spending money on their credit cards. Your friends are, your family is. Everyone has credit card debt, so you normalize it. But the problem is, it's not something that should be normal, is to have big chunks of credit card debt, because until you do the math, you really don't understand how much money that you're giving away to interest every month for something that you bought months ago, and how long it's going to take you to actually pay it off if you're only paying the minimum payments. If you're making $19 an hour, sometimes you might have to work 2, 3, or 4 hours just to pay the interest payment on something that you bought months ago, right? And that's not good. That's time you're never going to get never going to get back. I started focusing on paying off debt as fast as I could. And the first time you pay something off, like, even if you have a credit card with only like $200 on it, every time you see that credit card hit zero, you feel like a weight is lifted off your shoulder, right? And it feels like you literally just got a raise, because now you don't have to worry about allocating money to your credit card every single month. You pay it off, you don't think about it again, and life's good, right? So my goal to you guys is, if you are saving and investing, but you have really high interest debt, like credit cards. Now, if you have a car payment and it's a low interest debt and you plan on keeping the car for a while, I have that. I don't worry about paying it off. But if you have a credit card with over 20% interest and you're just making minimum payments, focus on making those payments. Focus on paying that card off, because that is going to boost you up way higher and instantly give you, a 20-30% return on your money, because you're not going to have to pay that every single month. The next thing I learned is that your income is the floor, right? It's not the ceiling of what you can earn. And I used to have this mindset when I was making $19 an hour, that even though I was a very driven person, I would always think, well, this is it. I make $19 an hour, and I never saw a way out of it. I knew I was going to get promoted in this. You get into this mindset that kind of like, this is all I'm going to make right now. But the truth is this. If you're making $19 an hour, you should have the free time to be able to experiment with little side hustles or freelancing or learning new skills. And you don't need a lot of money up front to do these things. You can start a side hustle for as low as $100. You can start learning new skills for free online, doing free courses that give you certificates that you can add to your resume. Nothing crazy, but just every little bit kind of stacks over time, and those things can open new doors. They can lead to better opportunities. They can lead to extra income. You can even start social media. That's a great way to start making money on the side. And this is when I realized that it's like your job sets your base pay, but your growth, your hustle, your skills, that's what's really going to determine your ceiling and really going to differentiate you from a lot of other people. Obviously, you can shrink your expenses to a certain extent, but you also have to grow your income. Now, I always think that a lot of people talk about growing your income online, and they make it sound way easier said than done, because, they say, oh, just learn coding and freelance it, or, do this and you'll make it $10,000 a month. It is a lot harder nowadays to increase your income, especially with the job market we're in, but you just got to stay consistent. You got to learn new skills, and don't give up. I think a big problem is people give up before something starts even rolling. If you are starting a side hustle and you're getting burnt out of it, take a break. Just don't completely give up on it, because you don't know, kind of what you have and how good that idea is going to be until you truly launch it and truly get it out there. The last thing I learned is financial freedom is really a mindset thing before it's an actual dollar amount thing. Financial freedom really doesn't have to do with how much money you make. It has to do with your mindset first. Even at $19 an hour, a lot of people think you can't be financially free at $19 an hour. And the truth is this. When I started living below my means, when I started planning ahead, when I started being intentional with my money, when I started budgeting, when I started investing, life gets a lot less stressful And you stop worrying about money a lot more. And yeah, of course, I didn't feel rich. I wouldn't call myself rich. I'm not rich by any means, but I felt in control. And there's a lot of quote unquote rich people who don't do anything that a financially literate person would do, and they don't feel in control, and they make way more money than I do, right? And honestly, that's what financial freedom really is. It's about being in control of your money versus your money controlling you. And I think a lot of people believe, there's this magic number. Like, you need $100,000 a year, or you need to make $500,000 a year before you can feel free. But the truth is, if you don't have the right mindset, you're still going to feel broke no matter how much money you make. And there's a lot of people who make $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year. They know what they're doing with their money, and they're financially free. Versus people who are making $200,000, $250,000, $300,000 a year, have terrible, financial habits, don't know how to treat their money, and those are the people that are not financially free, making the most money, right? So financial freedom starts the moment that you decide to live differently, even on a small paycheck, even when you're making $18, $19, $20 an hour, even when it doesn't feel possible. That's when the financial freedom actually starts, because you're going to build those habits. Those are going to stack over time, and you're going to be able to apply those habits when you start making a lot of money. Those are the 5 biggest lessons that I learned about, financial freedom when I was making $19 an hour. And, if you're in that spot right now, I promise you that the habits you're going to build today matter so much more than the actual number on your paycheck, because once your mindset changes, all your opportunities, your financial freedom, everything else changes, right? So if you found this video helpful, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, let me know where you're at on your financial freedom journey, and thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a good day.